Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm super duper excited to be here with you today. Excuse me. If you hear me coughing, it's because today's podcast inspiration, today's podcast episode is brought to you by this weird little cold virus thingy that I've been dealing with for the last few days. So if I sound a little stuffy or if you hear me, like I might have to stop like right now and take a little drink of my electrolyte beverage or whatever. I apologize, but it is what it is. And I still wanted to do a show. Okay, so let me explain to you why today's little weird cold virus thing has inspired the episode. Okay, I'm just gonna dive right in. You know how it sometimes warns you on the side of like a medicine label or whatever, it will say, do not. Like if you're gonna take this sucker, like if you're gonna imbue this thing, you're gonna put it in your body, it'll say like, do not operate heavy machinery. Oh my God, this makes me laugh so hard. Like, if you're gonna take this stuff, like, do not get behind the wheel of a big ass vehicle, is what they're basically saying. And I don't know why, when I think about this, I always think about people on like forklifts or like doing shit that they shouldn't be doing. Okay, but listen, when a medication label includes the warning, do not, do not operate heavy machinery. This is what it is kind of saying. So I Googled it because I wanted to make sure. So I'm going to look at my notes. So I Googled this and because I wanted to make sure. This is what it says. When a medication label includes the warning, quote, do not operate heavy machinery, unquote, it's a serious caution against engaging in activities that require alertness and coordination, including driving a car. This warning signifies that the medication may cause side effects like drowsiness, dizziness, or impaired judgment, which can make operating any vehicle or potentially dangerous equipment unsafe. Okay. And I'm talking about this. You might be like, why the fuck do we care? Why are you telling us this? Because I think this also applies to us as humans in our development and how we get ourselves in trouble and how we suffer. And I'm going to make the connection. So just buckle up for safety, buckle up for safety, and stay with me. Come along for the ride. Okay. So, and then there's a little section that says what heavy machinery includes. Um, while many initially think of construction equipment, heavy machinery on a medication label also encompasses cars, trucks, motorcycles, and other motorized vehicles. Okay, so we got the warning. We've all probably have seen it somewhere, unless you're somebody who maybe comes from a faith tradition where you don't believe in taking medicine, but most of us have seen this, okay? So this got me to thinking about us as humans. And I think that these bodies that like we're running around in, I think that these bodies and operating systems that we are operating within in this human experience should also be labeled heavy machinery. We are constantly operating heavy machinery, not just like not just like those things, tractor trailers, not just like the big shit like cars and stuff like that. And I think we can potentially be dangerous to ourselves and others if we're not careful. And I kind of want to dive into this, okay? Sometimes, and this is the big thing, and I made myself some notes because originally this was going to be a piece that I was writing. So I ended up writing like 6 pages, and then I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to turn this instead into a podcast. So that's what I'm working off of is my notes to myself and what I had written. It says sometimes we're operating these things like these bodies, right? We're operating these bodies within the context of the world, within the context of our families, our relationships, our work, and our business. Okay, we're operating these things, and we kind of have no clue. It's just true. We have no fucking clue what we're doing. We have the side effects from our childhood, and we have impaired judgment, and yet we're just out here driving around, bumping into each other and causing damage sometimes to ourselves and others. So let me put this whole thing in context with how I wanted to talk about it as humans. And so the inspiration, I should have said, to be fair, the inspiration also came from my work with my clients. I've been thinking about this connection between operating heavy machinery. But where it also comes from is, yes, I was thinking about on the sides of the medicine, because you can hear I'm a little stuffed up or whatever, but it's also about with my mentoring clients. So sometimes I'll be talking to a client, right? And we're talking about a challenge that they're going through or an issue that they're having or a situation that's been going on. And it's starting to become a problem in their life, right? It's getting in the way of their relationship or relationships, whether that's with a partner, a sweetie, their siblings, family members, whatever, their coworkers, right? Their clients, their if they have a business, right? Or if the, in their work environment, their coworkers, whatever it is. But it's starting to become a thorn in people's side. It's starting to be an issue in their life. But when we break it all down and when we get under of the thing, and when we start to identify the source of the symptom or the source of the problem, there can be a moment where there's a temptation for people to be really unkind to themselves, especially when it comes to like these sometimes unknown or unspoken expectation, sometimes but really known by that critical voice that is saying things like, so they'll have thoughts like, I'm an adult, I should already know this, or I can't believe that I'm doing this, or I can't believe that I keep doing this, or I thought I already dealt with this, right? There's some sort of self-shaming going on about the fact that they're operating, quote unquote, this heavy machinery, but they don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know why they're doing it. They don't really know why this thing continues to be a problem or why this pattern or habit or whatever that they're doing, right? And that's when, as a spiritual mentor, right, as their mentor, as their coach, that's when I really try to be the unshaming witness that most of us did not get when we were younger, number one. But just now, as adults, like this is how healing first can begin, is we all need some sort of an unshaming witness to bear witness to like what's going on and what we're feeling and what we're thinking and what we're saying, and to really listen. And to help us to not kind of like self-flagellate and beat ourselves up and be unkind and be critical, because we oftentimes do have a really loud internal critic, you know what I mean? And so not only do I try to be an unshaming witness, I also try to point out something that is so obvious. It's so obvious, and yet we don't really talk about it. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it in this particular way. We don't often spend just personally a lot of time considering the fact of what I'm about to say. And that's that we are all walking around operating heavy machinery, and yet nobody gave us an operation manual. Like nobody gave us an operation manual, and they certainly didn't give us a warning label. I mean, like, think about it. And this is what I was saying to my client the other day. I was like, think about it. And this is what I posed. I said, who in your younger life, this is what I said. I go, who in your younger life sat you down to talk to you about how to feel your feelings, or taught you about emotional intelligence, or taught you about attachment styles, or polyvagal theory, or how your nervous system works, or trauma responses, or how neural networks are created and built in your brain, or about internal family systems, or PATS work, right? Or IFS, as they call it, right? Who taught you even that your body was supposedly, quote unquote, keeping a score, right? You know that book, the famous book by Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps a Score. Who was teaching us that our body was going to be keeping a score that we weren't even aware of, right? It's like we didn't know. Nobody taught us how to be doing this whole human experience. No, and especially, look, Gen X kids, Generation X kids, right? We were by and far like we were like the latchkey kids. We were the kids that were like kicked out of our house in the morning, told not to come back. They did not want to see us, smell us, hear us, nothing. They didn't want to have to feed us. They didn't want to deal with us and our nonsense and our shenanigans. They were like, don't come back home until the street lights come on, right? Highly, highly unsupervised. So we were just out there doing shit, repeating shit, what we heard, what we saw, right? So when I ask my clients this question, okay, you're over here beating yourself up because you think you should have it all figured out, that you should know how to do all of these things, how to feel your feelings, why you become patterned and like all these things, right? And I'll say to them, okay, tell me who in your life. Like maybe you grew up with a parent who was, because I could see some people raising their hands and say, oh, well, my dad, taught me this. And I'll be like, well, what was your father like? And so often it's like, maybe if you had a dad who was like a therapist, or you had a mom who like took a course somewhere, like whatever. But usually, right? I mean, I know some kids who were like raised by parents who were meditation teachers, right? So they were taught some skills about how their brain works and how their nervous system works. But most people, the number one answer that I get from my clients when I say to them, who taught you about yourself? Who taught you about how your brain works and your body works and your nervous system works and your feeling, right? So we have like the autonomic nervous system, but I sometimes think we have like a central feeling system, right? Who taught us about our feelings and navigating difficult emotions, right? And you know what the number one answer they say to me is? Nobody. Nobody taught me. Nobody taught me this. And I'm like, right, okay. So, and then we expect ourselves to know how to do things differently. We weren't given good role models. We weren't giving, nobody was giving us examples. Nobody was a living example. Nobody was doing anything differently. We were just watching the history, the generational trauma roll fucking downhill, right? Until it hit us. And boom, I'm like hitting myself in the cheek with my fingers, like, at some point it lands with us. We do now. I mean, we are more informed now than ever. We are over-informed, I think, in some ways. But we now get to decide that the buck stops here. Okay. But so the thing is, I often say to people is like, yeah, you might have gotten your menstruation talk, right? The women's cycle, your period talk. Somebody might have sat you down and said to you, at some point you might stop bleeding. Although not every girl did. I know a lot of girls who had to learn from their friends, right? I got that talk when I was very young. Like I listened in on the sex talk when I was like 6 because my stepsister Kathy was getting it from my mother. My mother prepared us for that stuff, right? We even had like a little book with like the 2D pop outs of the genitalia and stuff like that. And it started with like birds and bees and animals, and like it was fantastic. How babies were made. I still remember the book. I can see it vividly in my mind. So I got that sex talk when I was really young. So we might have gotten those talks, but a lot of the other stuff about the operating system of the heavy machinery was like left off the table. We weren't taught that stuff. So now, like I was saying, a lot of the times we're just out here. We're just out here repeating what we saw, doing what we were taught, guessing, and then crossing our fingers and like, I'm crossing my fingers, crossing our fingers and hoping for the best. That was the MO. That's how like we were doing things. But here's the thing. The number one key ingredient, this is what's so important. And it's just, all right, let me just give it to you. Okay. The number one ingredient that it takes is that a person has to be curious enough as to why things are going down the way that they are, why things are happening, right? In their life, in their relationship, inside of them. It's like, why is this happening, right? They have to be curious enough about what their own role is in it. And then they have to be curious enough about wanting, right? Or how they can maybe do it differently. Be willing to let go of the old operating system, right? The old thing, the way that they've been doing things. But they've got to have enough innate curiosity about themselves, about others, about why. I always say, why you do what you do, think what you think, say what you say, believe what you believe, tell the stories that you tell yourself and others. You have to be curious about your own heavy machinery and how it operates. And there's something that, and not only that, like the key thing is, first of all, yes, we want to get under, we want to understand all that, but like the how I can now do it differently, like that's wicked important. Okay. So the fighter Joe Louis once said something, the heavyweight champ. He once said something, and it struck me when I first heard it. It has stayed with me ever since. And he says this. He says, "I can show you how to box. I can teach you every technique and trick I know, but I can never make you a fighter." That comes from inside, and it's something that no one else can give you. All right, I'm going to say it again. I can show you how to box. I can teach you every technique and trick I know, but I can never make you a fighter. That comes from, I'm hitting my chest here, my heart. That comes from inside. And it's something that no one else can give you. And I think the same can be said for transformational work, for spiritual mentoring, right? For coaching, for these things that I do in the world. This piece, this curiosity piece, this being driven by something from the inside to understand yourself, to know yourself, and to transform and change yourself, that has to come from the inside. I can't make you curious enough as to why, like to know why you think what you think and say what you say and believe what you believe and do what you do. Like I can't make you do that. I can't make you curious enough about your own suffering and how your ass ended up where it is. You know what I mean? Like I can't make you curious enough about your own transformation. Or I can't make you have a strong enough desire to feel differently. This has got to come from the inside. And if you know somebody in your life who's going through it, who's had a tough time, who's been suffering like for a while, and you might be sitting there, you might be that person in their life, and you're sitting there and you're like, excuse me, you're like, I've got some answers. I've got some tools. I've got some practices. I know a group you can join. Like you might have all the answers for them. But if they're not ready and willing to like do it, it doesn't matter what you say. I was listening to an episode of a podcast the other day. And one of the guests was talking about big transformation that he had made in his work, in his own life. And it was also affecting his work. And it was for the positive. It was for the positive. And he kind of kept hinting that he had deepened his faith or deepened his spiritual practices, and that he had, I don't mean found God in that, like, but he was having a deeper relationship with the divine and with God and with source. And he kept hinting at it. And one of the things that he said is he was like, I'm totally paraphrasing, but what he was basically was saying is, I don't want to go too deep on this because I know that in the past, people have said these things to me and I wasn't ready yet to hear them. And he's like, and it's my own personal experience. And the host, said, no, man, like talk about it, but people just sometimes are not ready. They're not ready to give up the old way of being and the old suffering and the old stories. They're just not ready. And you could freaking hand deliver. You could give them the manual. You could give them the operating manual. They are not ready for it yet. Do you know what I'm saying? So I was thinking about this whole thing, and I was like, when people come to work with me, a lot of times the opponent, like when you think about this fighting metaphor, right? A lot of times the opponent that they're usually fighting against, even when they've convinced themselves or they think that it's somebody else or something else. And I'm not saying that there don't exist systems of oppression and systems of violence and systems. I'm not saying that it's all on everybody and it's their own. However, I will say this. Mostly what most people are fighting against the opponent, it's themselves. It's their old ways of being, their old ways of thinking, their old ways of kind of like doing things. And and this is what I just wrote. I said, what they're up against is their old ways of thinking, believing, storytelling, and behaving. A lot of times what they're shadow boxing with are the habits, the patterns, the stories, and the conditioned ways of being that they learned or that they had to use to survive their younger years when they were kids. They're bumping up against sometimes the meaning that they've assigned to things. They're bumping up against the echo of their trauma, the experiences that they had. And they're also a lot of times bumping up against the old solutions that they used that no longer work. You know what I mean? And the problem is that number one, we keep coming back to it. We weren't given the operating manuals. What we were doing is kind of learning on the fly and learning by what we could glean from like what older people in our life or our siblings or our parents or whoever, right? The influences in our younger years when we're deeply programmable in those younger years, especially between 0 and 8, you know? And the problem is that a lot of the survival techniques and defense mechanisms that we put in place, the things that we used to kind of navigate the world because we didn't know any better, those things may have taken us a long way. They may have taken you a long way. And then there comes a point where it stops working. And this is when we start to get conflict. This is when we start to get disassociation, like we don't feel connected in our relationships. We don't know how to be vulnerable. We don't know how to make connection. We don't know how to have true intimacy. We don't know how to like, you know, be a part of something. And a lot of times it's just that the old mechanisms and the old tricks that got you here, are not going to help get you there. And I'm pointing off like to where the change is, to where the transformation is, right? The stuff that, meaning like it happens inside of us. But where we're at now, if you're suffering, if you're struggling, you know, if you're in a shitload of just like not soothing, our best thinking, our best, you know, maneuvers, our best strategies and shit that we've been doing that got you here, those aren't the same things that are going to get you there, to that place. There's only so much bobbing and weaving that you can do. There's only so much like ducking, bobbing, weaving, like footwork, you know, for using the metaphor of boxing. There's only so much you can do to bob and weave with stress or anxiety or overwhelm or not feeling like you're good enough or that you matter or that you're loved or lovable, right? There's only so much you can do on your own with those old ways of being before you find yourself just kind of feeling beat up and exhausted and overwhelmed and slumped in the corner, you know, the corner of the ring, like Rocky, when Rocky was saying like, cut me, Mick. Remember when Rocky had that big bulbous eye? He's in the corner, he's all bruised and bloody, and he's like, cut me, Mick. You know what I mean? And here's the thing, like in the work that I do, you know, I always say, like, I can teach people powerful practices. I can teach them these really helpful processes. I can teach them perspective shifts that will help them, you know, with these old blocks, removing some of the old blocks and the barriers that they've built, rewriting some of those old stories, rewiring in some new beliefs, right? Some new subconscious beliefs. You know, this work that I do, I know that it helps people to change their relationships with themselves, their relationships with others. It changes their lives. Like I know it. And I know that I can share the things that I've learned. I can share the impactful tools that I've used, the things that have been like real deal, holy field game changes, things that have been life-changing for me. That's really what I'm doing on this podcast is I'm spreading more love by sharing the things, the ways of being, the ways of thinking, the tools, the books. That's why I bring people on once in a while. Like, I want you to meet my teacher. I want you to meet my friend who wrote this book. Like, I want people to be exposed to new ways of thinking, new ways of being, new ways of believing, being able to tell better stories about their lives. You know what I mean? That's what this is about. And, you know, I can share all those things that have been wicked helpful for me and that might be wicked helpful for you too. But again, I can't make you curious enough to like cut the crap or put down your dukes or ask for help or join the nest or sign up to work with me one-to-one, or even if you're local to come to a yoga class. Like I can't make people ask for help or take a leap of faith or make them invest in themselves or do any of that stuff. That's not my job. My job is to just try to be myself and love people. Like that's my gig. Be who I think the divine, who God intended me to be to the best of my ability, to listen deeply inward, and then to answer the call of any divine intelligence that comes to my knucklehead brain, right? Like that's all I can do. And then try to go out and to love people. And this is one of the ways that I love people is this podcast, is to try to share something or just have something. Maybe one day you'll hear something, but I'm not here to convince anybody. That's what I always say. Like I kind of laugh at myself, and I don't mean it in a condescending way, but like I am not like, I have been an entrepreneur for over 25 years, but that is not like my strength in like the marketing and the branding and the convincing people and writing convincing copy and trying to get people. I'm not trying. It's just not who I am. My whole thing is I'm just going to try to be an alternative, right? I'm just going to try to live my life in a good way, and I'm going to share some shit, and hopefully it's going to be helpful to some people. You know what I mean? Maybe I'd have a lot more money if I was willing to run the whole racket, but it is what it is, you know? So again, I can't make people be curious enough to want to come and work with me, curious enough about ending their own suffering, curious about learning new practical tools, somatic work, subconscious reprogramming, all this stuff. I can't make you want to feel fucking differently, right? You know what I mean? You can't do it. You know this in your own life. You might have a kid or a friend or a partner or whoever, and they're going through the thing and you're like, oh my God. You can't make people want to change. You can't make people want to feel better. You can't make people give up their old stories. They have to, as they say in 12-step programs, right? Like they have got to hit their own bottom in their own time, in their own way. And like Joe Lewis says, the thing has to come from the inside. It's something that nobody else can give you. Nobody else can do it. You have got to make a conscious choice that like, I'm ready or I'm willing. And this is the thing though, that word, right? There's a big difference between wanting a shift, wanting a change, wanting a transformation. A lot of people like, okay, let me just stay on track. There's a big difference between wanting the thing versus being willing to do what needs to be done in order to have it. Let me say that again. There's a wicked big difference between wanting a shift, a change, a transformation versus being willing to do what it takes, to do what needs to be done in order to have the change. And there are a lot of people that want a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? There are a lot of people that want a lot of things, but not everyone is willing to do what they need to do. They're not willing to be who they need to be in order to have what they want to have. They're not willing to be who they need to be in order to do what they need to do so that they can have what they want to have. And that right there, that willingness, that curiosity, nobody else can give you. It's an inside job. And it's in the inside job. It's in the inside work where the magic and the miracles, that's where it happens. And trust me, I get it. I mean, the inside work of like slowing down and being mindful and being aware and paying attention to who you are and how you're showing up and the things you say, the things you think, the things you believe, the things you do, the patterns that you have, the conditioning that you have, the habits, the addiction, like all that stuff. It can feel really scary. It can feel a little intangible. It can feel like you're just swinging in the dark. Right? Like if you're in the ring fighting, it just feels like you're just swinging around. You're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And that's the whole point of this, right? The whole point of why I do what I do is that nobody can do this for you. Nobody can make you curious. Nobody can want you to end your own suffering. Nobody can make you stop and consider there might be a better way. Nobody can do that for you. But when you are ready to do the work, again, I can't do the work for you, but you do not have to do it alone. It's such great news that you do not have to do it alone. Like back in the day, coaches and mentors and like friggin' courses and like books have existed for a long time. Thank you, double amen hands to books, right? Books were like my first coaches and mentors. But these days, man, like there's so much help available out there. And that's where somebody like me comes in. It's helpful to have somebody in your corner like Mick Taraki, coaching him, challenging him, because that's just it. I mean, coaches and mentors, yes, we do cheerleading. We do hold, I always say we hold the strength and the vision for you until you are ready to take it on for yourself, right? We hold that vision of you in our minds. We can support you. We can help you, to work through some things. We can help you to have share with you different ways to have a new and different perspective. It's wicked helpful to do that. And here's one of the main reason why, when it comes to especially this whole concept of like operating heavy machinery. The thing about operating heavy machinery on your own is you can end up believing, thinking, and feeling like you're fucked up, you're broken, you're a mess, you're that you need to be fixed, that you're kind of doomed to being the way that you are, that you're stuck, that you've tried everything else, you've just tried everything else, and like nothing worked. And when you're trying to quote unquote operate heavy machinery, like being a person in this human experience, in this insane world that we are existing in right now, when you try to do it on your own, meaning you don't have any practical tools, you don't have any outside guidance, you don't have support of a community or a person, you don't have new perspectives or practical tools. When you try to do it all on your own, you may not yet know, right, about how we got conditioned as children, or how the brain works, or what your body or nervous system is doing with trauma and stuff like that. So what I mean to say is, if you don't know about how your brain works and how your body works and how your nervous system works and all those things I was listing earlier, like attachment theory and polyvagal stuff and fight and flight and the nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic, and how neural networks are created in your brain so we become more habituated, and how the brain has a negativity bias and blah, blah, blah. All these things, again, we might have gotten the sex talk and the period talk, but nobody was sitting down to talk to us about like what happens inside of our brain when we feel stress. And nobody taught us about the vagus nerve, and nobody taught us about these things. And if we're trying to figure out why we're doing what we're doing and how we are what we are, and we don't know any of the spiritual or scientific factors, if we're just operating based on what our parents did or what our grandparents did or what your siblings told you or what your friends did or the crew that you hung out with or the cast of characters that you're surrounded with, you are dangerously what's the word I'm looking for? Like my brain's a little burnt. You are dangerously close probably to believing, I don't know if I said that the right way, but you start to believe, here's the simplest way. You start to believe, again, that you're fucked up, that you're broken, that you can't change it. You don't know how to change it. You're stuck. This is just how it is. And, I've dated people in the past who I thought had really not great ways of being with their family or those they love, right? I would see them doing things and I'd be like, that's kind of a shitty thing to do. That's kind of a shitty thing to say. Why did their parents put up with that? Why did these people, and you would hear their parents say things like, oh, that's just the way so-and-so is. That's just the way they are. I'm like, yeah, if you've been letting them get away with it for 20 years, that's how they are. You know what I mean? And there's just kind of this like, throw your hands up. Oh, I guess that's just the way I am. There's no changing it. Yeah, no, I call bullshit. But you may not even know that you can change a thing about yourself if nobody has given you the manual on your heavy machinery. If you're just out there operating on a wing and a prayer, if you're just like on the fly, gonna think you're gonna try and figure it out, right? And and I'm all for books. I am like books #1 fan. I am such a I'm a writer, I'm a reader. Like I love the words. But what a lot of people do is they read the book and then they feel good about buying the book and reading the book and highlighting in the book. And then they don't put this shit into practice. And that's another thing about having somebody in your corner is you have built-in accountability, And unless you're really self-integral, unless you have really good self-integrity about like, oh, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to highlight it and I'm going to pull out I'm going to extract the practices and the tools and the things that this author talked about and this teacher, taught me and I'm actually going to put it to work in my life. Yeah, most people don't do that. They read a shit ton of self-help books and spiritual books and they feel all great. They get the immediate dopamine hit, check the box, right? Feel good about it. And then they don't do shit with the information. And the healing comes from the intimacy with the material, putting it into practice, application of the theory. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So here's the thing. if we are trying to do this all on our own and we're not aware, this is what I put right here, right? Trying to operate heavy machinery on your own, you can end up feeling like you're fucked up because you may not yet know about how conditioned we get as children or how the brain works or what the body and the nervous system does with trauma, etc. And the thing is that I'm really sensing these days, you know, I haven't run any graphs or done any analytics. It's just from being with people and talking with people and feeling into like like really listening to what people are saying and not saying, but I get a sense, I get like this energetic hit. And I think especially with everything that's going on in the world, people are feeling a pull to make this inside work stuff a bigger priority in their life. I think we're going to start to see more and more and more as the world gets more automated, as the world gets more mechanical, as the world gets more up in the head, analytical, as the world gets more in that AI realm, and it starts to become a little bit more like treating us like we're computers and looking to AI to be your fucking coach rather than another human being, right? And AI cannot give you a hug. AI cannot see your tears running down your face. AI cannot communicate with you like another warm, like human being. I'm not going to go down that tangent. And we're back. But here's the thing. I'm really sensing that people are more desperate than ever to have more real experiences, like real connections, heart to heart connections. They want real human interactions. They want to know that somebody cares while they're trying to do this work. Okay. And I think people are getting ready to move from simply wanting things to be different to actually being willing to get in the ring. This is what I'm sensing. And I hope I'm right. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that people are starting to kind of wake up a little bit more to understanding that the fix isn't found out there, that the external validation isn't going to do it, that they can get all the likes that they want and they can get all the followers that they want. They can make all that money and they'll still find that they're not happy. And they're like, I did all the things. I did all the things. Like I got all the things. I bought all the things. I surround myself with all the things and I'm still not happy. Like what's going on? And the thing is that the external things are not the thing. It's an inside job, you know? And I think people are starting to feel a little more willing maybe to make a commitment to experiencing more happiness and more inner peace and more confidence and a sense of knowing and understanding themselves and to have a little bit more freedom because they don't feel trapped by just like, this is how I always am and I'm not going to be able to blah, blah, blah. You know, and I always say to people, look, you can do it the way that you've always done it. You can keep trying to do it on your own, or you can try to do something differently. You know, you can hire somebody like me. This doesn't have to be me, you know, but you're listening to my podcast, so I'd be an idiot not to say it, right? You know, to work with somebody like me one-to-one, or to get somebody like me in your corner, like, you know, Rocky had Mick, you know, or you can join a supportive community. And for some people, that's something like the Nest, which I offer, like a group mentoring, you know, community and program. Or it's, you know, your church people, or it's the synagogue people, or it's your book club, or it's like, you know, your yoga class, whatever it is. I don't know what your community is, but, you know, hopefully you have one. So the Nest and the Quest, you know, that's what I do for people. The Nest is the group program and the Quest is my one-to-one work. And, you know, mostly I just wanted to share this with you because my sense is that there are a lot of people out there who, you know, don't know, number one, that they're kind of operating heavy machinery and they're not aware that they never got the manual and they're beating themselves up because they think they should have it all figured out when nobody's really explained it to them. Even when they're in their 50s or 60s or 70s and they're just like, oh, this is just how I am, or I don't know, and da 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 da. And I will tell you this. The reason why I combine spiritual mentoring with subconscious reprogramming and somatic work and, you know, neuroscience, like how the brain works, all that stuff, is because those were all of the things that I needed to understand myself, to try to understand, yeah, why do I do that? Why do I think that? Why do I still believe that? Why do I get and these patterns and these habits and these ways of being like that create my own suffering, right? Cause my own suffering, and so often, so many of us, and I should just do a whole other episode on this. We think that the world is the cause of our suffering. Like it's the world, and then we're at the effect of the world. When really it's opposite of that. We are causal. Our thinking, the way that we move through the world and think about the world, that is causal. The world is the effect. And if you think that the world, I just tap my forehead, if you think and believe that the world is a big old piece of shit, what do you think you're going to experience out there? But if you go out into the world trying to see the good, the beautiful, and the holy, right? That's why I did that whole good, beautiful, and holy challenge. Like, was it last year? Yeah, I think it was last year. Is because the brain has a negativity bias and it's always looking for what's wrong. And this is my whole point. If you don't know these things about yourself, you're going to make assumptions about yourself and you're going to have expectations about yourself. And the reality of it is that nobody ever sat your ass down and said, hey, this is how it works. This is why. This is probably why. Here's a new way of thinking about it. If you knew this about yourself, you might stop beating yourself up for why you do that. You know what I mean? But again, I can't make you curious enough. I can't make you feel the call. I'm not here to convince you. Any of my listeners, anybody, that's on you. You got to be curious enough to want to get curious about this heavy machinery that you're operating and to move beyond the body and to understand, right? To understand some kind of universal spiritual principles. And then also the science of being human, how the brain and the nervous system and the body works. And I find bringing those things together, it's powerful. It's powerful. It is life-changing. So I hope that's helpful to you in some way. And I hope it helps you to just ease up on beating yourself up a little bit, because there's a lot of things that we weren't taught. But here's the thing. They're available to you now. So that's the question. Now what? Now what? Do you want to keep operating without the manual and just trying to do it based off of whatever you glean and gather in your environment? Just holding on for dear life and doing it the way you've always done it? Or do you want to get curious enough to really come to know yourself and understand yourself so that you can be who you want to be, so you can do what you want to do, so you can have what you want to have? And I think if you talk to us, most humans, we all just kind of want the same things, right? We want to experience love. We want to know that we matter. We want to know our work is meaningful, that we're making a difference in the world. We want to have some fun along the way. We're not that complicated, but there's a lot of things that go down in our lives that makes feeling and experiencing those things challenging. And that's where somebody like me comes in. So if you want to learn more about how to work with me, and again, as I said, it doesn't have to be me. Maybe you start going to therapy. Maybe you go do whatever. I don't know. But if working with me is, makes you curious, you can go to my website, Karen Kenney, KENNEY.com. And you'll find it all there. The Quest, the Nest, my yoga classes, my hot to hot days, which is like a 3 or 6 hour or whatever it is, opportunity to, it's like, I call it like in your pocket coaching. So you basically just use your phone, you use an app called Voxa, and you have access to me, and we do a day of mentoring. It's like wicked fun. So there's lots of ways. You can find it all on my website. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here. I hope this has been helpful to you in some way. I hope you can feel the love that I'm also sending your way. And I really appreciate it, especially if you're still listening. If you're still listening at this point, you can still hear the sound of my voice. Thank you for tuning in and sticking with me the whole time. Okay, wherever you go, may you leave the people and the animals and the environment and yourself, the planet, the whole kit and caboodle, better than how you first found it. Wherever you go, may you and your energy and your presence and your love and that heavy operation, that heavy piece of equipment. And I don't mean heavy like you're heavy, you know what I mean? But like the density of this human experience, wherever you bring that parts of yourself, may you be a blessing. Bye.